What would you do if your neighbor secretly plugged their entire house into your electricity? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. But instead of just confronting them, I pulled off the most epic prank, and it was pure genius. You won't believe how it all went down. Stay till the end to see the ultimate payback. And if you enjoy this video, comment the number 1, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Discovering the power. Theft. I never thought I'd wake up one day and find out my own neighbor was stealing from me, but that's exactly what happened. It started off small, just a flicker here and there in my barn. At first, I chalked it up to an old breaker, or maybe a minor wiring issue. But then, it kept happening. My lights would dim randomly. My tools would lose power for a few seconds, and my security cameras even cut out a couple of times. Something wasn't right. Then one evening I stepped outside, and that's when I saw it. An orange extension cord, snaking across my yard like a thief in the night, plugged straight into my barn's outlet and running all the way to my neighbor Karen's house. My stomach dropped, my blood boiled. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, the woman who had harassed me about my unapproved farm animals and unkempt lawn for years, was stealing my electricity. The irony was almost too much to handle. I wanted to march over there right then and give her a piece of my mind, but I stopped myself. No, this wasn't just about getting angry. This was about getting even. Karen had spent years nitpicking every little thing I did, citing non-existent HOA rules, and now she was the one breaking the law? I wasn't about to let this slide, but I needed proof, undeniable, inescapable proof. So I did what any self-respecting farmer with a grudge would do. I grabbed my hunting camera, set it up in the barn, and waited. The next morning, I checked the footage. There she was. In her ridiculous bedazzled hoodie and overpriced yoga pants, sneaking onto my property in the dead of night, dragging her cursed extension cord like a raccoon stealing food scraps. The sheer audacity, the nerve, and the best part, she actually looked around like she was some kind of master theft, completely oblivious to the fact that I had caught every second of her little heist on camera. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee, a slow grin spreading across my face. Oh, Karen, you have no idea what's coming too. The fake HOA power bill. If there's one thing Karen respects, it's the HOA. She worships it like a religion. She throws the rule book at anyone who steps even an inch out of line. So, I figured why not use her own beliefs against her? I spent the next couple of days crafting the most terrifying official-looking HOA letter imaginable. I pulled out all the stops, fancy legal language, formal formatting, and even a bold red final notice stamp on the envelope. The letter read, "Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that unauthorized power consumption has been detected. Your residence, under the Farm Utility Homeowners Association FUHA guidelines, Section 12.5, subsection B. All non-compliant electricity use is subject to immediate penalties. Current assessed fees, $10,000. Failure to remit payment within 14 days will result in additional penalties, including but not limited to power disconnection, lien placement on your property, and legal action under the FAA Compliance Act. Sincerely." FAA Compliance Officier even got my buddy Tim, who used to work in a law office, to format it so it looked completely legitimate. Then I sat back and waited. The next morning, I watched from my porch as Karen stepped outside in her usual floral robe and fuzzy slippers. The second she saw the letter, her face twisted in confusion. She picked it up, read it. Out a scream so loud birds scattered from the trees. I nearly choked on my coffee, trying not to laugh. She stormed inside, slamming the door, and within minutes I heard the furious tapping of her keyboard. She was probably drafting a very strongly worded email to my fake HOA customer service. I leaned back in my chair, watching the chaos unfold. Oh, this was just getting started. 3. The official inspection. I knew Karen wasn't going to take this lying down. She'd fight it, look for loopholes, try to worm her way out. So I had one final trick up my sleeve. An official compliance inspection the next morning. My buddy Tim showed up dressed in his finest cheap suit, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the part of a no-nonsense government inspector. He marched up to Karen's door with the kind of authority that made people nervous. Then he rang the doorbell. 3 times from my porch I heard her shuffling inside. When she opened the door, she looked less like the confident HOA tyrant she usually was, and more like a deer caught in headlights. Tim cleared his throat. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm here to conduct an official compliance review regarding unauthorized power usage under the Farm Utility Homeowners Association." Karen blinked. "The what?" Tim sighed like he had explained this 100 times already. "The Farm Utility Homeowners Association, AA. You should have received a notice." Karen clutched the fake bill in her hand. "This is a scam. I don't owe anyone $10,000. Tim flipped through his clipboard, nodding. "According to our records, your property has been consuming an unauthorized amount of electricity, placing you in violation of subsection B, Article 12. He gave her a pointed look, which, as you know, carries significant penalties. Karen's face turned bright red. "This is ridiculous. I didn't steal anything." Tim calmly clicked his pen and jotted something down. Noted. Karen grabbed the edge of her doorframe, like she needed it to keep from collapsing. "God, you can't just show up here and threaten me." Tim nodded. "Absolutely. But we do have an obligation to ensure compliance. At this point, we have no choice but to escalate." Her face paled. "Escalate how?" Tim pulled out a bright orange disconnection notice and slapped it on her door. Karen let out a yelp like she had been electrocuted. "This is an official disconnection notice," Tim said, deadpan. "We'll want to make arrangements before the deadline." Karen snatched the paper, scanning it in horror. Then she bolted inside, slamming the door behind her. Tim walked back toward me, grinning. "She's losing it."
Hi.
I laughed, shaking my head. "This is better than TV." Karen's house was running on my farms. Poeri spent the rest of the day testing my theory, turning different things on and off in my barn while watching the power meter each time I shut something down on my end. My readings should have dropped, but they didn't. Instead, the meter barely budged. That meant only one thing: my electricity was still being used, just not by me. With a sinking feeling, I turned my eyes toward Karen's house. Could it really be that bad? I decided to go a step further. I shut off my main breaker completely. And that's when I got my undeniable proof. Karen's house was still glowing, her security lights, porch lights, and those hideous pink flamingo lawn ornaments, all still on. It was like a scene out of a horror movie, the moment when the main character realizes the monster is much bigger and worse than they ever imagined. My heart pounded with a mix of rage and disbelief. This woman had not just stolen a little electricity, her entire home was running off my power. Her air conditioning, her kitchen appliances, her television, probably even her phone charger. My mind raced as I thought about how much money she had likely cost me. Weeks, maybe even months, of electric bills that I had been unknowingly paying for. The audacity was overwhelming. I clenched my fists. My first instinct was to storm over and yank that extension cord right out of the socket. But then a much better idea started forming in my mind. If Karen thought she could play dirty, she had no idea what kind of game she was about to get into. The fake HOA power bill Quran worshipped the HOA like it was a sacred institution, even though my farm wasn't even under its jurisdiction. So if she loved their rules so much, why not use that against her? That night, I sat down and started crafting the most terrifying, official-looking HOA letter she had ever seen. "Dear homeowner," it began. "It has come to our attention that unauthorized power consumption has been detected in your residence." I loaded it with bureaucratic jargon, citing fake regulations and obscure legal codes that sounded just official. Enough to be convincing. At the bottom, in bold red letters, I included the fine $10,000. Payable within 14 days, or additional penalties would apply to sell the illusion. I called up my buddy Tim, who used to work in a law office. He formatted the document with just the right amount of legal mumbo-jumbo. We even printed a custom envelope, complete with a final notice stamp in intimidating red ink. The next morning, I sipped my coffee as I watched the delivery guy drop the letter on Karen's doorstep. Seconds later, she stepped outside, dressed in her usual floral robe and fuzzy slippers, her expression already sour. But the moment her eyes scanned the letter, I saw it happen. Her face drained of color like she'd just read her own obituary. And then, just as I had hoped, she let out a shriek so loud it sent birds flying from the trees. I nearly choked on my coffee. This was going to be fun. Karen's meltdown. Karen stormed inside, clutching the letter like it was a court summons. I could almost hear the gears turning in her brain. She was trying to figure out who had sent it, whether it was real, and most importantly, how. To get out of it, minutes later, I heard the frantic sound of typing. No doubt she was already drafting a furious email to my fake HOA compliance office. I leaned back in my chair, savoring every second. A little while later, I saw her pacing her front lawn, phone in one hand, the letter in the other, pure panic. Written across her face, then the next phase of her breakdown unfolded. Her husband, Greg, had been dragged into the mess. Poor Greg. I watched as he read the letter, scratched his head, muttered something, and tried to walk away. But Karen wasn't letting him off that easily. She started waving the paper in his face, talking at 100 miles per hour. Greg, clearly uninterested in whatever ridiculous HOA battle his wife was waging, threw his hands up and went back inside. Karen, however, wasn't one to accept defeat. An hour later, she had gathered her HOA loyalists, a group of middle-aged busybodies who still followed her, despite secretly resenting her constant complaints. Together, they marched to my gate like an angry mob, Karen leading the charge with the letter raised high like some kind of holy scripture. I stepped outside, playing dumb. "Afternoon, Karen," I said casually. "Something wrong?" Her face twisted with frustration. "Do you have any idea what this is?" she snapped, shoving the letter toward me. I took my time, pretending to read it. Then I nodded. "Looks like a power bill," I said, scratching my chin. "Steep one, too." Karen's eye twitched. "This is an outrageous, fraudulent charge. This fee doesn't even exist." I raised an eyebrow. "Of course it exists. It says so right there on the letter." Her loyal followers exchanged nervous glances. Karen had spent years enforcing HOA rules, but now that the tables were turned, doubt was creeping into their eyes. "Why did you get this notice in the first place?" I asked. Feigning concern, Karen stiffened. "I don't know." I smiled. "Didn't plug into someone else's electricity, did you?" Her face turned pale. Checkmate. Karen's desperate attempt to cover up. Karen's face was frozen in shock, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. She knew I had her cornered. But if there was one thing I'd learned about Karen, it was that she would never admit when she was wrong. Instead, she straightened her back, puffed out her chest, and tried to regain control of the situation. "This is ridiculous. I don't steal electricity," she declared. Oh, the beads of sweat forming on her forehead told a different story. Her loyal HOA minions shifted uncomfortably. Karen had spent years bullying them into submission, but now she was caught red-handed, and they knew it. I folded my arms. "Then how do you explain your house staying lit up while my main breaker was off?" She blinked rapidly, searching for Anne. "Excuse, then." She let out a forced, nervous laugh. "Oh well, Greg must have set up a backup generator." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? A generator?" I didn't hear one running. Her eyes darted to Greg, who was standing awkwardly by the porch, probably regretting every life decision that had led him to this moment. Karen shot him a desperate look. "Yeah," Greg stammered. "It, must have been real quiet." I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Karen turned back to me, her expression hardening. "This letter is fake, and I know it." "Oh, you can't find me for something I didn't do." I smirked. "Actor." "Right, Karen? The letter is fake?" A flicker of relief crossed her face before I continued. "But the theft? That's very real." Her jaw clenched. She had lost. She knew it. But Karen would never admit defeat outright. Instead, she huffed, turned on her heel, and stormed back inside, her house slamming the door behind her. The HOA minions exchanged nervous glances before awkwardly dispersing. Greg, probably sensing that this wasn't over, muttered something about needing a drink, and disappeared inside. I smiled to myself. The game wasn't over yet. Karen's apology. The next morning. I expected Karen to double down, maybe file a complaint against me, spread some nonsense about how I was harassing her, or pretend the whole thing never happened. What I didn't expect was to see a fruit basket sitting on my doorstep. It was wrapped in fancy cellophane. It was filled with expensive chocolates, imported cheeses, and even a bottle of wine. A small card was tucked into the side. I picked it up and read the message. "Let's put this little misunderstanding behind us. No hard feelings." Karen, I snorted. Oh, this was rich. This wasn't an apology. This was hush money. Karen didn't feel bad. She just didn't want me. To report her? Well, that wasn't good enough. I grabbed a sticky note, scribbled a quick response, and stuck it to the fruit basket. Then, I marched right over to Karen's porch and left it at her door. A few minutes later, I heard the front door creak open, and a frustrated groan. My note read, "Nice try, Karen, but I prefer my electricity unstolen." I stood at my window, sipping my coffee, watching as she stomped back inside. Game set. Match daughter, so I thought, because Karen wasn't done yet. The final showdown. I should have known Karen wouldn't let things go that easily. Later that afternoon, I saw her dragging Greg outside, waving a bundle of extension cords in her hands. My eyes narrowed. What was she up to now? Then I saw it. Karen was trying to discreetly remove the evidence. Greg, looking utterly defeated, was unplugging the stolen power line from my barn and coiling it up as quickly as he could. Karen was standing over him, barking, Order's eyes darting toward my house to see if I was watching. Oh, I was watching, and I wasn't about to let her get away with this. I grabbed my phone, stepped outside, and made sure she saw me filming. The moment she realized what I was doing, her eyes went wide with horror. Greg, still holding the stolen extension cord, looked like a man who had officially hit rock bottom. "Are you recording me?" Karen shrieked. I grinned. "Don't mind me. Just making sure I have evidence in case I need to report some unauthorized power usage." She turned red. "That's illegal? You can't just film me?" I shrugged. "My property, Karen, and you're stealing from me?" "So yeah, I think I can." Greg, clearly done with this whole mess, muttered, "Let's just go inside, Karen." But Karen was still fuming. She opened her mouth to argue, then realized she had nothing left to say. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed inside. Greg, still holding the evidence of their crime, sighed and followed her. And just like that, it was over. No apology, no admittance of guilt. But at least for the first time in months, my electricity bill would be mine alone. I smiled to myself as I walked back inside. Game over, Karen.